Time is a hell of a thing. Always marching onward no matter how much you protest, no matter how much you thrash or fight, it churns in a roiling mess of events that transpire seemingly autonomously. You find the decisions are made for you, and when you really stop to think about it, well, life is a hell of a thing. Always marching onward, no matter how much you protest. There are many things, many important things that are so fragile in nature, that should you ever touch them, all that you'll have left is a sight of your own hands. Accursed instruments that broke something that was once beautiful. And you can wish all that you'd like that you can fix it, that you can put it back together, but even if you could, it'll never be the same. We travel forward, not back. Nothing can ever truly be undone. History can't truly be erased. Though we can't see it, it's still there behind us. Every moment has a chance to be something beautiful if left alone, or if handled with more care than we could sometimes muster. And when your judgment slips, or your attention wanes, all that you're left with are the tools by which you broke it, and if you aren't careful, the method by which it broke you. To say that things were going badly within the Empire would be an understatement, but to tear it down a notch further and cut off its head was a move that would continue to haunt him. It's been some time since Dad's benefactor had taken an interest, but today, he brings a gift. To get it, I must only use the powers that he first gave, the ones that I worked so hard to forsake. Full list of rules are in the description. The objective lied! I was able to at least minimize the usage of Blink here, but there were a couple that I didn't have the knowledge to escape. Given only a name to work with, though, I was left to fester on the past. Having not played the base game in a while, I was rusty, unfamiliar. I came in with the best of intentions regarding strategy, and forgot a lot of them along the way. Even forgetting things like how much various guards care about minute things like sound. Apparently some dude renowned for killing people sprinting behind you is rather disconcerting to these folks. And I don't like this jump. Dowd's knees are incredible! With some doing, I got into an alleyway and up to see a factory run by a guy who just so happens to have information on a ship called the Delilah. Fancy name he's got right there slapped on it. After having a long debate with Dowd over what was and wasn't doable regarding barbed fencing, I eventually relented. My only other option was through a wall of light, or through a small building that I hadn't thought I could make it through. The jump required was extremely doable, but specifically while sprinting. I'm more used to movements like Borderlands 2, where you can start and stop sprinting on a dime. This one is more nuanced, so the idea of trying to run along a handrail was a fantastic one, and also not mine. So we streamed this run over on Twitch. I can't speak for anybody else, but I had fun. Among the audience, though, was one Azrael, and they were a phenomenal help throughout. They're a lot more experienced with the game than I am, and while I'm used to a really poor brand of problem solving, I'm really grateful to them for having helped things along. The run would have easily taken another several hours to beat without them, and all the while striking a really nice balance between guiding my hand when I was clearly stuck and letting me stumble when I was just being dumb, because it is how we learn. So if you're seeing this, Azrael, hello! And also thank you! Once again, the map is beautifully put together. Crawling up high affords many opportunities for quick movement, as I've proven across most of the games that I play. The Outsider might be powerful, but gravity is more so. After definitely not a lot of floundering, you can't prove it, the VODs have already expired, I was able to make my way into the place through the waterways nearby and underneath. I spent a frankly embarrassing amount of time navigating through the place via my incredibly underdeveloped sense of direction. It takes a genuine effort and focus for me to really hone in on the idea of places in relation to other places. As such, we were at it for longer than is necessary, just kinda going in a really small circle that you're not expected to make. I'm not sure why my brain just wants so badly to throw out that information, but here we are. Where that here is? No idea. And well, I can't help but notice, but the DLCs just don't have the same polish that the base game does. I love this game, I love the DLC, but, yeah, there were a few spots kind of like this where things just don't follow things like logic or reason. Luckily, the time spent spinning my wheels wasn't entirely wasted. It did help to at least kind of get back into the swing of things, and of course reinforce good information to have. Dowd has the knees of a god! In the midst of my break-in, the chat voted that putting down a very specific whale shouldn't count. For context, it's well beyond saving, and I'm not gonna get anything for having done it. It is just more effort in the grand scheme of things. But it was shockingly easy. Oh. Oh. Unfortunately, for as long as we looked, I couldn't find a way into the upper area without either a speedrunning trick or a blink, so another one goes on the pile. Never great to see, and unfortunately it won't be the last. For better or worse, my target is up here, and I need information one way or another. I can at least handle this with great care and a serious tone. Luckily, sneaking him out of the place was easy with the amount of practice we had in the place. Speaking of luck, though, I was just glad that him being forced out of my arms wasn't lethal because fall damage can and will kill NPCs. We probably don't need to talk about how we got information out of the guy, but zappy chairs are weirdly common. Also, hell of a time to be making threats and whatnot, my guy. Many people recognize that there's a difference between bravery and stupidity. Not you, though. You barrel straight into the ladder. And surprisingly, it was really easy to locate a spot to drop him off. You might think we'd have to pack him up into a crate, but that would involve another blink. Is it moral to let him live? Not really. But unlike the whale, this will affect the run. By accepting a blink, it becomes easier, and I just couldn't have that. For the rules of the run, we've got to stick to non-lethal methods and not getting detected nor using abilities. Both arguably break a rule. Really, we did both and reloaded, so I'll let you believe whichever you'd like is canon for story reasons, but we did go with the more difficult of the two for gameplay purposes. Things after were absolutely fine. Until they weren't. We tried a lot of things to solve the problem, but fact of the matter is that there were guards directly in my way that I needed to not be. They were standing directly in the only path that I knew upward where I was gonna meet Billy. Breaking the rules, I could throw something at them to get them to come out of the alley, only to find that there was usually a guard standing there anyway, meaning it would require a second throw, which feels bad. I spent a bit just looking for other routes to take me up to my destination, but all led to the same conclusion. This wasn't happening without some bending. I ended up going from choke dust to whale oil tanks, as that felt less bad, until I found out that it lured a fourth guard out of the woodwork to make my life worse. That was a nice discovery. At first I was fully convinced that the game just spawned another, but it was just me being bad. I started trying to distance the tanks a bit more from the enemies before blowing it up to avoid the aggro range of the fourth, but with some goading atop a bridge, I was able to lure them out and parkour my way up. Truth be told, looking back at the footage, I think I could have done this differently. And we'll get into that, the hows and the what, later. But it felt a lot better doing that than throwing a tool. But even then, I wasn't going to escape the fact that the end of the mission is just mean. We were doing some testing, which did involve being detected, running around trying to find better ways up the building, but I was able to locate a jump that I made on my second try that would nullify having to use blink at least once, so keeping power use to a minimum, I'd reload and start back. Of course, this jump was easy. I mean, it's just going around a little corner onto a ledge. What's the big deal? Like, can you imagine struggling with this, even a little? That'd be wild. Billy! Billy! Yo, Billy! Hey! Come talk to me! Please! Okay.
It's a pleasure to watch you work. Feels like there's always more to learn about pain.
Why do people keep saying that to me? Slipping through the usual suspects, I was on my way to find a guy who was with the woman who the boat was named after. A guy who apparently has a bad relationship with his niece. A woman who is being attacked by... Oh. That's not good. To get behind them, I need to get through these boards and avoid folks in two different factions. I tried a lot of different methods to lure them out, to break me in. There are other paths in theory, but without breaking other rules, none that I know of. So I tried breaking them to get the enemy factions to feud and see how things would settle out, and we spent a pretty long while testing, but if I'm being honest, I'm not so sure gang war is the way to go. It was mostly inconsistent, and overall removes enemies from the picture, which could both make it easier and harder. So, given that we were breaking the rules anyway with a sword, might as well use blink and stick with the harder of the two, which I did have to use again because climbing wasn't really an option after. The DLC was not made for this. Luckily, nobody decides to investigate the obvious tripwires that I couldn't circumvent. After would come two enemies in close proximity to one another, above a third with no meaningful cover in between. So of course, this would go by really easily. I have no understanding of either difficulty in general or my interactions with it. It's an enigma. For having done it though, I got to have a chat with the guy's niece. She wants him gone, his will, and I want her intel, so off I go. For the sake of being thorough, I knocked out all of the hatters within the nearby building while making my way away from their homestead. Couldn't have them spotting their sleeping buddy after all, and I may not know exactly what happened last night, but the mad lad finally did it. He got his own squad. Now, if only any of them were here to help him prevent people from getting through. To carry on in the next place, I just needed to nick a key, talk to a prisoner, and systematically ruin the reputation of a noble who deserves it anyway. Doable. He'd also harbor the path past the nearby wall of light, which gave me a relatively straight shot at my destination. As long as, of course, this constitutes a straight shot for you. The rest of the place, I dare say, was, well, a disaster. I'm not sure what else to call it. It was a disaster. To save some time that I absolutely couldn't save for the stream audience, I broke into his home, extravagant as it was. I followed him upward, carefully navigating around his guards. With a surprising amount of ease and a heaping helping of luck, I was able to swap the papers on him with some given to me by the prisoner. Me not paying enough attention, I thought that might be the end of it. A fool 'twas I. I've found that waiting in this game is often a solid strategy, waiting for a chance to present itself. Circumstances to shift, windows to open, and doors to close. The thing is, though, that there are a lot of enemies that seem to just get stuck. They won't move for as long as they're put here, and there really didn't seem to be much that I could do about it. If waiting is the play, and they just eternally gaze exactly at my destination, then what the hell is my recourse? Eventually, making my way over to another destination where I'd pick up a secret ingredient called crime, we then had to use some really janky architecture to get back down. I didn't quite think some of it would be so precise as to allow it, but putting us back into the building's ventilator, we'd smoke the building out with the scent of death. He'd present his papers to some guards that spelled how guilty he totally was. It wasn't at all fabricated. And now the mission is totally done. Except for the fact that I forgot his will is near the top floor. So after reliving my Golden Cat experience and not realizing that the dumbwaiter can be controlled to go to higher floors, meaning it was a me waiter all along, I spent way too long trying to get back into the building with somehow more brutal patrol patterns than before, with even more people that just stood in place glaring my way. It definitely wasn't getting to me at all how often I was being spotted and the frequency of reloads. The constant reloads. Where are you guys going? I know where you're going. It's hell! With a group really well covering the area that I needed to get to, though, it was looking like I was out of luck. After entirely too long and a different save for new enemy locations, I was able to get back up to his office to do what I should have done the first time. It wasn't even hard. I'm terrible at this game. Hey Billy, you could have helped during any of that. For having not eliminated the guy before, though, I got a really intimidating sight. Turns out, really easy to slip by, though. So, all in all, the escaping part wasn't so bad. Turns out, I've managed to earn the ire of a witch, which is only mildly horribly concerning. After finding out that the mission was done successfully, though, getting into the last mission, I cut out a lot of running in circles, so my thoughts, of course, would fall on accursed things that should never be thought. How much worse could it get? Now, I didn't like knocking enemies out, but I didn't have a ton of choices at my disposal, so I was trying to systematically remove variables from the problems best I could. In terms of strategies, I've had many that were figuratively slamming my head against a wall, but this is a new one for me. By sprinting, I could draw the attention of enemies, it would pull them away from my compatriot, and also each other. I think it maybe could have been used for the alley, but here it let me pick them off until none remained to see me or the sleeping bodies of their friends. One assassin down. Or up? Yeah, either way. For my main target of the area, I'd make my way through the top. But where to put people, you may ask? It'd risk a body being discovered to leave them in a building with patrols coming in and out, and with how bad cover is, taking them all out would be awful. Well, what if I just pull one of these and use the exact same spot as before, because this was honestly one of my better ideas. Also, Dowd's joints are incredible. So after depositing a few key guards, I was able to get past in a really weird sort of fashion. You get to wait here with your people until I'm done saving mine. I took out another key figure before moving to the next set. No good way I could find to stay out of their gaze, unless, of course, I were to do a lot of running around to draw their attention because I'm a human noisemaker, knock out a key figure with his back turned to save my ally, and then really slowly move the person to where I was keeping most of the others. Easy as. Please just, ignore that this really wasn't. I failed. so many times to execute some really simple maneuvers, and I enjoy the game, but I'm not good at it. Abusing the really poor peripheral vision of a guy who actively decided to inhibit it via thick cheeks on his mask of choice, I was able to snag some plans and make my way out. Using the exact same strategies before, but with the addition of dumpsters, because this plan is trash, I was able to slowly pick off 3 dudes that otherwise don't move in a tiny location with no other recourse. Genuinely interesting how much of a double-edged sword sound is in this game. Maybe I'm easily impressed because I don't play many stealth games, but I think it's neat. You are free to turn back and pretend you never saw anything. And then I'm gonna knock you out. I'm gonna put you with your buddies, and we're all gonna go about our merry way. Except you. And your buddies. I'm gonna go on my merry way. I don't care what you do. Sneaking into the last area, I needed to clear it out just a touch. And just like the base game, this room really wasn't so bad. Honestly, for as awful as I expected the place to be, it was pretty tolerable. The rest was just getting out and getting back to my crew. We were able to capture the remaining dudes. My second in command revealed that she was a traitor after feeling super guilty about the whole thing. Bit late, spared her life. Delilah stood on a rooftop throwing empty threats when I've got a whole group of dudes that are fully capable of using guns. She ain't exactly got the power in this exchange, and it has the same energy as people who spend their time just trolling around online, posting comments, just trying to make other people's days worse. Like, it's just sad. Find better hobbies. There's something genuinely, really depressing about a person who has so little meaning in their life that they're trying to actively take that from other people and acting like it's a win if they succeed in making someone as miserable as they are. To think that Delilah has nothing better to do than come here and go, "Ooh, I'ma getcha next time," is sad. Love this game, it's great, but damn does this scene make the villain feel pathetic. Pitiful, even. Starting up the second day of streaming on Master Assassin, as we only had access to Elite before, I'd start by failing immediately, but also not by technicality. This is a nightmare Dowd is having about events to come, meaning I never technically got spotted by anyone. Just, you know, in my head. And also, I failed miserably to combat Dream Corvo. I wasn't sure how long the second DLC would take, and re-attempts of the fight meant sitting through some unskippable stuff, so we circled back around to it after beating the main game. Turns out, not that hard, even on the hardest difficulty. Win or lose, with neither character adhering to my personal canon, indicating a failing on the writing team's side, and definitely not me for not following a path that isn't the intended one. Absolutely no relation to my choices whatsoever. Not even a hint of sarcasm. I've got to figure out how to get to Delilah one way or another, which means I'm going to need the assistance of a smuggler, and my best bet for that is currently in prison. So I'm here to bust her out, and as scary as it is, there's magic music playing through the speakers that prevents me from using magic. So that's going to make things way harder than they have been. I'm practically shaking in my boots. Around the courtyard and up the wall, there was a really easy entry point. My plans more or less came to a halt though, when this was more or less as far in as I could figure out how to get. Something about having an arc pylon protecting its own power source while also having patrolling guards made things tricky. We spent an unfortunate amount of time just looking around the place for another entry point, and I was pretty sure that the second DLC was going to shape up to be a lot more painful than the last. Luckily, Azrael wasn't going to let me flounder the whole time, and came up with the brilliant strategy of just not getting hit. Really though, systematically rushing the thing was absolutely the play. I'm not sure if I ever would have thought to try it without their help, but if I had, it certainly wouldn't have been so soon. For the most part, the sneaking after was pretty comfortable. We made our way to a door mechanism that I didn't really get at first, but I knew it was built like other combination mechanisms, so if we tried enough, then we could skip finding the correct answer. We were here for a little bit, but if we ignore all of the cells that were mistakenly opened, and may or may not have immediately been met with gunfire followed by silence, it worked great. The actual guard around the person that I came there to get was really lax, so with the door open, everything was fine. Well, mostly fine. I hope you're not expecting a twist though where this made things hard, because the security surrounding the prison clearly wasn't improved after the Corvo incident. This was shockingly easy. The hardest parts of moving her just involved picking her back up along the way. Otherwise, the exit was mostly smooth sailing. The next mission would start out with a gang that once followed the person that I just rescued, but is now hostile, as well as another gang, which is hostile, greeting each other in the streets in a rather pleasant fashion. Which is a joke, they were quite hostile. Who'da thunk? I would implement a powerful strategy to make my way onward in a relatively quick fashion. For some reason, this at least feels effective. Not sure if it is, but it makes me feel better. For the most part, though, I was dealing in paths that felt handcrafted for what I was doing. Almost like that's exactly what they were. I tried a good few times to sneak onto the ship to confront the guy who stole it, but found that going above deck was ineffectual. I also had to have the underside entrance pointed out to me, despite also having this footage of me swimming directly under it. And I know I always say that I'm unobservant, but god damn do I mean it. After knocking him out on technically his own ship, I swam back away from the ship to try again from the top. It was surprisingly effective the second time, and I was able to signal her where she definitely treated the man nicely, and there's no blood on my hands for actions here that can be proven in a court of law. Possibly because, well, for legal reasons, because I was told so by the acting captain, and that's all I want and or need to know. With the ship back under Stride's control, I just need to get it working again, and we'll be home free. I just gotta pick up a major ship component from the other gang. Bright side, now only one of them is hostile. Dark side, neither party in this conflict is all that intelligent. These men just keep falling. They just keep falling to their deaths. Call it not observing their surroundings or falling victim to gravity. Frankly, they're stealing my thing. It just feels rude. I did spend a while here trying to figure out when would be optimal to move, as the group's feuding means fewer eyes on me. Getting into the base of the Hatters, though, would be really easy when I stopped overthinking it. The whole mission had a reasonably relaxed feel, but it was fairly lengthy. Of all the plans I did come up with throughout the run, my personal favorite was probably the water wheel heist. It wasn't long or anything, but it got me into the place, disabled a major point of their security, and all the while within the realm of the rules. It wasn't the cleanest, given the fish, but it was still pretty okay. Before long, I was sneaking into their place with the best of them. And while it was arguably describable as rather aimless, navigating the place wasn't so bad. Honestly, pretty fun. Not quite how I expected to be describing the place, but here we are. The folks in here want to make a deal, meaning a second faction is going to be non-hostile in exchange for dealing with some stuff surrounding a third faction. It was around here that I realized that this was a gopher mission, as in the one where everybody has me go for stuff. So Ha ha ha, you thought you had me there. You little tricksters. Slipping into a fresh hell that I absolutely wouldn't have noticed on my own, welcome to Witches, Weepers, and a General Nightmare. The place is small, the cover isn't bad, but it's still not the best. I need to get a crank it, and I have 2 mandatory hits on vines that are preventing the water wheel turning. We spent longer here than is even mildly reasonable, but things went more okay than you'd think for the majority of it. The problem came with the last part, of course, and we could agonize over every detail about how many tries I burned just trying to sneak around the folks within the room. We could talk about how the saves got really weird with load-ins having me detected immediately, swinging a sword had weepers coming out of the woodwork to spot me. But we could also just talk about how this turned into knocking every enemy in the place out. Because the witches started coming downstairs, the weepers started going upstairs, and anyone finding an unconscious body in this place that everyone is patrolling means that I get to restart the entire mission to find when someone was spotted. For my efforts, for my struggles, I received a code that I could use to open a door that I could have just brute forced. I spent far too long with those witches for an outcome that I could have skipped, and life hurts sometimes. For turning in the mission and trying to move on, I was spotted by some witches that teleport in. Surprisingly though, coward strats work a treat. Just running solved my problem, and some swords solved theirs. We may be arguably reaching Hitman's Bodyguard sort of questions with my helping and generally associating with murderers, but I didn't directly cause anyone to die, so I'm probably legally fine. Just as long as we also ignore, everything else. With that, though, we'd be into the final mission of the DLC and the run as a whole, which I would start on the right foot by walking directly into a detection via dog. Love to see it. There are at least a handful of ways to approach the homestead, and it's a lovely place to come visit via magic, but without, I don't think it can be done with this rule set exactly. We did discover that you can get up into the greenhouse without a blink. Not sure how you'd slip by all the enemies patrolling, but we tried for a while. Before discovering that getting anywhere inside the greenhouse also requires a blink. So we started cheating by teleporting up the right side of the building. Only one was required to get into the compound. After collecting a couple methods of entry, though, we quickly hit another snag. that I could find, there was nothing that I could reach from this side of things. While trying to get back, not only was I struggling to get onto the rocks, but there were multiple instances where I was struggling to get out of them. I'll say again, the DLC is a lot less polished. Still good, but why can't I just control my character in peace? Also, why can't I just walk through this branch? Let's face it, I probably wasn't going to make the jump over the fence even if it was solid, but this was an insult to injury. This was another blank, and the last one for the run. Getting inside after was easy. What wasn't would be navigating. If you know me, you know I get lost. If you don't know me, then hi, I'm Spud. I get lost. No amount of making the environment amazing will make it any less of a maze. I spent an age and a half looking for a place to just, go up slightly so I could find the gallery where the magic paintings were. This is definitely proper form for parkour. Here, we'd find a magic lamp, a key, some paintings, and Delilah musing to herself about her plans to take the body of Emily and thus become the new Empress without anyone else knowing, which is messed up on a lot of levels. After getting thoroughly stuck in a fireplace, which was somehow the most effective trap in a place full of traps, I had to get past this lot. As far as I can tell, there's no point at which they're not looking at each other. We watched through their whole holding pattern, and I didn't see any gaps at least. So what if we just loudly lured them away bit by bit and put them somewhere they couldn't cause harm? You better believe that's exactly how we dealt with this lot. I hopped through a narrow doorway with a tripwire without triggering it on definitely the first try, as far as you can prove, because the VODs expire. It wasn't the first try. It wasn't long, but I spent a bit moving things around it to mitigate the damage around it when it triggered, only to not set it off. I then had what felt like a really slick maneuver to take one of the two witches in here out of the equation, but it was me who was the fool. I failed to account for the fact that I'm literally dealing with witches, and witches are scary. Cool as hell, but scary. Luckily, they weren't all that hard to manage. Their teleportation isn't locked to specific paths, in that they can just kind of go to wherever they want to, including but not limited to more or less right in front of me. It may have been luck that cleared this room for me, but it was my luck. Technically using both the tool and magic here, I did what was required to continue the mission. The outsider popped in to say hi and that he was excited to see another encounter between two bearers of his mark. Said encounter would include me picking up this painting, followed by me swapping these paintings. The long and short of it after is that her ritual was meant to allow her to step into the being that is Emily, the heir to the throne. Now it's sending her to the void, as she just had that painting lying around for some reason. Not the strongest of endings, but still a great journey. Fundamentally, Dowd was faced with a choice. He could never fix the things that he destroyed. It may not have been what he wanted, but he damaged an empire beyond anything he could hope to repair, even with aid. The path of least resistance would be to simply let it burn. It's terrifyingly easy to let past mistakes dictate your future. They have a way of carving out a path ahead of you, even when you refuse to see where you're walking. As powerful as he was leading up to these events, he could turn tail at any time, but he didn't. Call it fear, pride, or some twisted sense of morality, but for all of his faults, and whatever his motivations may have been, he took the time to handle a precious moment with as much care and attention as he could muster. And with his two hands, he made something beautiful that could never truly be undone. But in any case, I'd like to thank my lovely channel members for your continued support. I know Dishonored doesn't have the same widespread appeal here as some of the other things that I do, so having some help in doing runs like these more as a passion project than anything else, well, it means a lot. Make no mistake, I always love getting to present what I do, but there's something really nice about getting to explore more niche things from time to time. Regardless though, I hope you enjoyed your time here. You probably know how to use social media, and I hope that means I'll get to hear your thoughts now, and on a future outings. Until then, remember to stay safe, spread some kindness in the world. Don't be afraid to look where your feet are taking you, be it in a solitary moment or the greater journey that is life, and I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.